Welcome everybody to week 3. And this week we're going to focus on finding others, who we want to connect to in relation to our focus and where can we find them. So this is the document that I've posted on Slack for us to use. And if you look at the top, I've put my intention in. So my intention is to connect, share and learn about self-management in health and care. So today we're going to start filling out the who, the where to connect with them and where you are now in relationship to them. And I'm going to go through this step by step using my intention as an example. So I put together a list of 6 people, well, 5 people, there's space for 6, but I've started with 5, and 2 groups that I think could help me in relation to my intention. And I've been intentionally bold around this. So the first one you can see is Aaron Dignan, and he is the author of a new book called Brave New Work. And I must admit, at the beginning, I'd have thought it was quite audacious to consider putting an author down on your list, but I want to show you what that could look like. So I think Aaron can help me achieve my focus, or is connected to my focus, because as his book is about brave new work, I want to see whether he's in contact with organisations that are already involved in self-management in health and care that I might know about. And also he might have offerings or ways of working with people or communities that I could be part of. So that's my rationale for choosing Aaron. The second one is Joost. Now, Joost is one of the corporate rebels, and what Joost is doing, and his colleagues, is really promoting and sharing the thinking behind the brave new work, or the different way of working around self-management, and has already done blogs with significant people in health and care, including, of course, Josta Block and other people. So I thought it'd be good to connect with him again, because I think he's likely to be connected to people involved in self-management and health and care that I might not know about. And I appreciate the learning and the sharing that corporate rebels are doing. The third one, and again this is feels an audacious one for me, is Frederic Laloux, who of course wrote the book Reinventing Organisations that inspired me to change the way that I'm working, and again was one of the ways that Bert Salk's fantastic work was brought to light. Number 4 is Josta Block himself. And number 5 is Lisa Gill. Now, Lisa hosts the most amazing podcast, in my view, which is all about sharing the learning from organisations that are self-managing. And it's called Leadermorphosis. And that's a podcast that I try and listen to every week. So those are the who. And then the groups, I finally decided on Teal for Teal International and Holacracy in the UK, and I'll explain in a minute why I chose them. So let's start with Aaron. The image on the right is taken from the search that I did for him on LinkedIn. And you might remember that the 2 channels that I'm particularly focusing on are LinkedIn and Twitter. So this is Aaron on LinkedIn, and I boldly connected to him. So I connected the connect button. And then if you look in the middle, this is how Aaron shows up on Twitter. So it's obvious for that he's founder of The Ready. So I thought following him on Twitter as an individual, but also following The Ready, made sense, because it looks like this is where they're going to be sharing their learning and what they're doing around self-management and the book. So really, really simply here, the person that you're looking for, decide which platforms you're more likely to find them on, and go and search for them and either follow them if they're on Twitter or connect with them if they're on LinkedIn. So let's go back to my table here. So once I got my list of 5 people and 2 groups, I then started to do, as I've just showed you, find out where they were on LinkedIn or Twitter or other platforms. So I've just shown how Aaron is on Twitter and LinkedIn. Joost is also on Twitter, but as Corporate Rebels and as himself individually. And if you follow their blogs, they invite you to join a Slack group at the end of the blog. So I then went and joined the Slack group too. Frederic Laloux is pretty low profile on LinkedIn and Twitter, although most recently he started to share a series of videos that he's making to support people. So Frederic is mainly connected on email, but if you email him, he kind of says, I don't really pay much attention to my email. It may take you several months to get back to you, or I may not get back to you at all. So Frederic is going to be a bit trickier in the context of me connecting out loud around my intention. Joss, it was easy to find on Twitter, and Lisa Gill is easy to find on Twitter as well. So I identified my people and then went to find out where they were most present and followed them. I did a search in Facebook, and let me show you what that looked like. So here, so in Facebook, I just put Teal in to see what came up around Teal, and eventually chose Teal for Teal International. So I just went to each of the groups, looked at how many members they've got, and looked at how active they are. And I chose Teal for Teal because several of the people that I'm already connected with are part of this group. So I asked to be invited to that. And then I went over to LinkedIn. And because my focus is self-management, I also want to broaden it out a little bit more, which is why I chose Teal and also Holacracy, because Holacracy is the process we're using around self-management. So I wanted to connect to that community as well. So in the same way that I did with Facebook, I typed in Holacracy, found Holacracy in the UK and requested to join it. And as you'll see there, Anna, who's part of this, and Matthew, who's part of this, are also way ahead of me and part of those groups. So that's how I decided on which groups to join. So the next thing is to decide where you are in relationship with these people now. And I'm using the 0 to 5 way of figuring that out so that I can see whether I have changed my relationship with them throughout the process that we're using here. So 0 is the person doesn't know I exist. 1 is we're connected by Twitter or something like this. 2 is they know I exist and we've had 1 interaction. 3 is I've had multiple interactions and they're likely to remember my name. 4 is you occasionally call on each other for advice or help. And 5 is you're a trusted advisor and you're regularly in contact with the person providing help or support. Now, John also uses a 0 to 5 schedule, but it's slightly different to this one and it's based on frequency. So the next thing that I did is went through all of the folk that I'm connected to and decided where I thought we were right now. So for Aaron, I'm following him on Twitter. I tweeted about his book and he liked the tweet. And as you've just seen, I'm invited to connect on LinkedIn. So I would put myself as a 1. Although you could argue that the fact that he liked my tweet made me number 2, but I don't think it's strong enough for that. With Juiced, I put myself at 3, and I'm really conscious I might not be pronouncing his name right, so I'll find out about that and correct it as necessary. So I was connected with Juiced and found him on Slack. Introduced myself to him and he invited me to write a blog for Corporate Rebels. So on that basis, I put myself at number 3 and where I'd ideally like to get to is number 4. So we have more of a reciprocal relationship. With Frederick, he emailed me about wellbeing tunes about 2 months ago. And I know that when I did the podcast with Lisa Gill on Leadomorphosis, she sent the link to him because I'd specifically mentioned him. So I put myself as a 2 with Frederick. With Jos, in the early days before I got started with my first wellbeing teams, I connected with him on Twitter and direct messaged him, and he suggested that I connect with Public World. So I put ourselves as 2. And with Lisa, because we'd done a podcast and we email each other on an infrequent basis, I put myself as a 4, and obviously I'd like to get to a 5. So I've deliberately chosen people that I'm either at a 1 with, some 2s, a 3 and a 4, so I can illustrate for you how you can make a difference for different people depending on where you're up to. And with the groups, it's not quite the same. So with the Teal for Teal International, I've joined, and with Holacracy in the UK, I've asked to join. So in our small groups now, I'll invite you to talk about how you got on with your intention last week. And if you remember, we were stacking habits and trying to connect the habit of showing up on Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever we were focused on showing up for a few minutes each week. So tell us how you got on with your intention about showing up on your social media, choosing a hashtag that relates to your focus and stacking habits. And then getting started on this week task, thinking about the relationships, the people you want to connect to, where you might find them, and how you'd rate your relationship right now. And share your reflections on that with the group. And tell us what you intend to do this week. And kudos to Bethan and Simon. I've changed it to this week I will, as opposed to next week I will. And please, we'll be in the groups for between about 30 and 40 minutes. So please make sure sure you identify a facilitator and a timekeeper, and I'll give you a shout when there's 5 minutes to go. And then next week, so please post in this week, I will, and it'd be great if you could let us know by Friday what your intention is. I invite you to work on your table and identify the people and the groups who relate to your focus, and to continue with your habit stacking. And next week, we'll be looking at how to connect with people with generosity.